The emergency room at Harrow General never sleeps. And on this particular night, neither does the man sitting in the corner of the trauma bay in a dark suit that has no business being in a room like this one. He isn't a patient. He isn't a family member pacing the floor. He arrived an hour ago without being announced, and he has not moved since. And the 3 members of staff who noticed him looked once at his face and decided, with the particular instinct of people who deal in crisis for a living, that he was not their problem to solve. His name is Lim Jae-won. In this city, that name is not spoken carelessly. It is spoken in back corridors and hushed boardrooms and precinct offices where men in expensive suits develop a sudden need to check their phones. It is spoken the way weather is spoken about, as something that arrives without asking, changes everything, and leaves the landscape different. Some people call him the shadow hand. Most people just make sure never to give him a reason to call them. He came tonight because his most trusted lieutenant took 2 bullets during a job Jae-won ordered. He came as a matter of honor, a quiet vigil in a waiting room chair. He is not a man who sits in waiting rooms. He is not accustomed to being still and peripheral and unnoticed. But tonight he sits, and in sitting, he watches. The woman at the nurse's station has been there for 3 of the 4 hours he has been in this building. She moves through the controlled chaos of the ER the way certain people move through difficult things. Not easily, not without effort, but with a fluency that speaks of deep familiarity. Deep brown skin under the harsh fluorescent light. Natural hair pinned tight in that professional way that still lets a little wildness escape at the edges. Blue scrubs. A tablet in one hand and a chart in the other, and at least 4 other things happening simultaneously that she is managing without appearing to manage them. He has been watching her the way he watched everything, cataloging, assessing, learning the shape of a room. And what he keeps returning to is this. She is the axis around which this particular floor is turning. Not the doctors, not the supervisors. Her. The one who notices the family in the corner who hasn't eaten, who remembers the name of the 7-year-old in Bay 3 and uses it, who talks a panicked husband through his wife's stable vitals in a voice so certain it becomes its own kind of medicine. She doesn't know he is watching. She glances through the trauma bay glass once, clocks the expensive suit, and files him under leave alone, which is the correct instinct, and moves on. He notices her noticing nothing about him. Most people, when they feel his attention, flinch. They look away too fast, or look directly and immediately regret it. She looked through him like he was just another person in a room full of emergencies. He cannot explain why that makes him want her to look again, so he doesn't try to explain it. He just notes it and keeps watching. And then the thing happens. She doesn't hear him approach. She is focused on the chart in front of her, her pen moving, her attention entirely where her attention is supposed to be. She doesn't hear Dr. O.J. Sick, chief of surgery, hospital legend, the god complex in expensive scrubs, cross the floor toward her with the particular stride of a man who believes gravity arranges itself around his convenience. O.J. Sick is handsome in the way that power makes men handsome. Silver-threaded hair, a jaw that could anchor a building, the casual ease of someone who has never once been told no. He moves across the ER floor like he owns it, because in every way that this institution has decided to enforce, he does. No one interrupts him. No one ever has. He stops behind her. Something crosses his face. Not surprise. Not the ordinary recognition of a colleague. Something darker and more specific, something that looks like memory laced with entitlement, like a man looking at something he has decided is his and has temporarily been inconvenienced not to have access to. Then his hand moves. It snaps out with the casual brutality of someone who has never had to consider consequences. His fingers close in a thick handful of her hair, her natural hair, her carefully pinned, professionally worn, utterly personal hair, and he yanks. Hard. The specific, deliberate yank of a man who wants eyes turned toward him immediately and has decided that this is simply how that gets done. The sound of it is nothing. The effect of it is everything. Every pin in the immediate vicinity goes still. 2 monitors beep into a silence that wasn't there a second ago. Someone's breath gets held and doesn't come back. Zara Boateng doesn't scream. She doesn't collapse forward or cry out or spin around with the immediate, visible distress that the situation objectively warrants. She goes still. Completely, deliberately still. The stillness of a woman who is not afraid. The stillness of a woman who is deciding. Jae-won watches her decide. She turns around slowly. The look on her face is something he will turn over in his mind many times in the weeks that follow. Not anger, not tears, not the visible collapse that the moment would justify. Something more controlled and more devastating than any of those things. The look of a woman who has swallowed something like this before, who knows the specific shape of this humiliation, and who is in the process of deciding, right now, what she is and is not going to do about it. I need the chart on bed 7. OJ6 says. Just that. Like his hand was not just in her hair. Like she is a drawer he opened. Like the entire floor did not just witness what he did. Zara's throat works. The humiliation is slow and deep, the kind that burns on the way down because it comes dressed in familiarity. Because she has swallowed this before. Because women in these spaces, black women especially, in rooms like this one that were built by, and for people who do not look like her, are expected to swallow it and smile around it and move on. Her hand reaches for the chart. She finds it. She hands it over. But her eyes say something else entirely. Something that will not be swallowed, that is not available for management, that lives in her face with a quiet, fierce, permanent refusal. In the corner of the trauma bay, behind the thick glass, Lim Jae-won watches her eyes. His jaw locks. His fingers curl slowly around the armrest of his chair. He is very still, in the way that he is still when the machine in his mind is running at full capacity. He has watched people be hurt before. He has been in rooms where cruelty was performed casually and often. He has even, on occasion, been the source of it. But something about this specific moment, this woman, this stillness, these eyes, does something in his chest that he has no category for. Because Lim Jae-won has not felt anything in his chest in a very long time. He has been careful not to. He doesn't move. Not yet. The night is young, and he has learned the value of patience. But the part of him that has been running an empire for 11 years without a single catastrophic mistake is already turning something over, already calculating, already deciding. He tells himself it is reflex, a response to injustice from a man who operates outside the law but has somewhere in his architecture a line. He tells himself he would have done the same for anyone. He almost believes it. It is past 2 in the morning when the shift supervisor materializes beside Zara at the nurse's station with the particular careful expression of someone delivering bad news from behind a professional mask. The ER has quieted by degrees. The worst of the night has been processed. Zara is charting, focused, doing what she does. She doesn't look up immediately. She finishes the line she's writing first. Dr. O filed an incident report. The supervisor says, her voice low. He's claiming insubordination. Refusal to provide patient documentation. Zara's hand goes still on the keyboard. He pulled my hair, she says. Quiet. Clean. The factual delivery of someone who has learned that emotion in these moments is ammunition for the other side. He says you misunderstood. That he tapped your shoulder to get your attention. The word misunderstood arrives in the air between them like a slap that has dressed itself up as an apology. Zara feels her pulse in her temples. Feels the precise shape of this trap beginning to close. Familiar, suffocating, the particular machinery of institutions protecting the men who built them. I have it on camera, she says. The entire station is monitored. The supervisor's eyes flicker. Relief, maybe, or something that might become relief if given the right conditions. Administration is reviewing the footage, which means Zara understands immediately that someone has already decided what the footage is going to show. In the hallway outside, halfway to the elevator, Lim Jae-won slows his steps. He heard. He stands in the corridor for a moment, perfectly still. He knows exactly what reviewing the footage means. He has watched institutions bury evidence before. He has, on occasion, helped them do it for people he owed favors. He knows the mechanism with the intimacy of a craftsman who built it. A quiet conversation with the right administrator, a form misfiled, a timestamp that doesn't match anymore. It isn't complicated. It is simply the language of power spoken fluently by people who were born to it. He pulls out his phone. Dials. It rings once. The security system at Harrow General, he says. The ER nurse's station. Tonight's footage, all of it. Back it up to servers they can't access. A pause. Now. He ends the call and walks to the elevator. He tells himself this is just what he does. That it is simply a response to injustice from a man who has a line. That he would have done this for anyone. He gets in the elevator. He is still telling himself this as the doors close. The next morning arrives with birds and sunlight and the ordinary brightness of a day that has no idea what it is carrying. Zara sits across from Human Resources and watches a woman named Director Han explain, with the practiced sympathy of someone who has delivered this speech many times, that in the interest of the patient care environment, Zara is being placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Zara keeps her hands flat on her thighs, keeps her face careful. What exactly is being investigated? Dr. O has submitted documentation suggesting a pattern of, he pulled my hair. The words come out clean and stripped of everything except what they are. In front of the entire nursing staff. 2 orderlies. Whatever family members were in the waiting area. He grabbed my hair and yanked it because he wanted a chart faster. That is what happened. Director Han's mouth tightens. The security footage, there are some questions about the angle. The angle, Zara repeats. Very slowly. We understand this is upsetting. I want copies of all documentation filed against me, Zara says. In writing. Today. She walks out before they can watch her fall apart. She makes it to the parking garage, to her car, before her body starts doing what it has been holding back for 12 hours. Not tears. Not yet. Just shaking. Hands against her car keys. Breath too fast and too shallow. The specific physical experience of sustained controlled rage finally finding a moment to show itself. She knows this feeling. She has survived it before. Knowing that doesn't make it lighter. Her phone buzzes. Unknown number. She ignores it. It buzzes again. And again. On the 4th call, something makes her answer. Exhaustion, maybe, or the irrational desperate need for any voice that isn't the one in her own head repeating the word misunderstood. Ms. Boateng. The voice is male, low, carrying an accent she places immediately as Korean but calibrated by years of international rooms. My name is not important yet, but I have something that belongs to you. She nearly hangs up. 49 seconds of footage. The voice continues, showing exactly what Dr. O did to your hair, your chart, and your dignity. Backed up to 3 separate servers the hospital cannot access. The parking garage goes very quiet. Who are you? Someone who was in the waiting room last night. Her mind snaps to the image. The man in the dark suit behind the trauma bay glass. The one she filed under leave alone. She remembers the quality of his stillness. Not peace, but the particular controlled stillness of someone who has decided to wait. What do you want? She asks. Because nobody in this world gives something without wanting something. The pause that follows is thoughtful, long enough to be genuine. Nothing, he says finally. Not from you. Then why? Because what happened to you was wrong. And the people trying to bury it are making a mistake. Another pause, quieter. I don't like it when people make that kind of mistake. Something in his voice makes the hair on her arms rise. Not fear exactly. Recognition. The understanding that this man does not make idle statements. That the weight of what he's just said is calibrated precisely to its actual size. If I need the footage, she says carefully, how do I reach you? You won't need to. I'll know when you need it. He ends the call. Zara stares at her phone in the parking garage of a hospital that just told her she misunderstood having her hair pulled. And then she does something that surprises her. She laughs, short, sharp, slightly disbelieving. Because that was either the most unusual act of charity she has ever received, or the opening move in something she does not yet fully understand. And either way, for the first time since her supervisor's mouth shaped the word misunderstood, she does not feel entirely helpless. It is a small thing. She is going to build on it. 3 days later, her union representative calls with news of a settlement offer. Quiet, generous, conditional on Zara signing a non-disclosure agreement and resigning her position. The number is designed to make the shame feel manageable. To make disappearing feel like a choice she made rather than a consequence imposed on her. She almost takes it. Instead, she calls her cousin Adiz, who is a paralegal and has a voice like a controlled demolition when she is displeased, which she currently is. Adiz listens to the whole account without interrupting and then says, with the precision of someone who has been waiting for this exact sentence, they tampered with the footage, didn't they? They say there are questions about the angle. Adiz makes a sound that belongs in a different context entirely. You need to fight this. Do you have anything else? Any other evidence? Zara thinks about the parking garage, the unknown number, the voice that said 3 separate servers. Maybe, she says. That afternoon, she sends 4 words to the unknown number. I'm not signing anything. The response comes back in under a minute. Good. Don't. 10 seconds later, a second message. There's a lawyer. Kwan Sua. Best in the city. Tell her Lim J1 sent you. Zara's thumb hovers. Now she has a name. She types it into a search engine. She sits very still with the results. She knows this name. Not from news articles. From something more atmospheric than that. From the specific silence that closed around certain conversations at the community center fundraiser last spring. From the particular way her colleague's voice had dropped when someone mentioned the shadow hand in connection with a warehouse fire downtown. From the way grown men in expensive suits looked at their phones when the subject arose. The man who just gave her a lawyer is the most dangerous man in the city. Her hands are not entirely steady when she dials Kwan Sua's number. But she dials. Kwan Sua is exactly her reputation made physical. A Korean woman in her mid-40s with reading glasses she uses like punctuation and a handshake that could close negotiations. She meets Zara in a glass-walled office, listens to the full account without speaking, then sits back and says, "Tell me about the footage." Zara tells her. Sua's eyes sharpen, and Lim J1 has it secured. Not a question, a beat. Do you understand who he is? I'm beginning to. Sua looks at her for a long moment. Something moves across her expression, respect and concern in equal measure. He has never, in 11 years of me knowing his name, done something like this without a reason. He told you he wanted nothing. He did. Men like him always want something, Sua says. The question is whether what he wants is something you can live with. She leans forward. But that isn't my immediate concern. My immediate concern is that Dr. O.J. Sick has filed a formal complaint painting you as a dangerous and unstable employee. The footage the hospital has released to your union shows 30 seconds with a convenient gap. Whoever got to the security system got there fast. Can we get the original through legal channels? Months. Maybe longer. Maybe never. Sua removes her glasses, polishes them with the precision of someone who uses this pause deliberately. Through the backup J1 secured, we'd have it by tomorrow. It would be admissible if we're careful about establishing chain of custody. She pauses. But using his resources puts you in his orbit. You should go into this knowing that. Zara thinks about the parking garage. The settlement offer designed to make her disappear quietly. The word misunderstood. I'm already in his orbit, she says. He chose that. I'm just deciding what to do with it. Sua puts her glasses back on. Picks up her pen. For the first time in the meeting, she smiles, small, precise, satisfied. Good answer, she says. Now, let's talk about how we take this hospital apart legally. The footage enters the legal proceedings on a Tuesday morning with the impact of something that has been building pressure for a long time and finally found its release. 49 seconds, crisp and undeniable. Dr. O's hand, his fingers closing in Zara's hair. The yank, her face, the chart sliding from her hand. And around her, the faces of 6 witnesses whose statements the hospital had quietly and systematically discouraged. The hospital's legal team requests an emergency continuance. The judge, a woman who has clearly been waiting years for a case that looked exactly like this one, denies it. Social media gets hold of the footage by noon. By 3 in the afternoon, Zara's name is trending nationally. By 5, she is sitting in her cousin Adi's apartment, eating jollof rice, watching news anchors debate the footage on 4 different channels while her phone accumulates 847 messages from people she has never met. She turns down the volume. She eats her rice. You okay? Adiz asks. No, Zara says. But I will be. Her phone buzzes. She has learned in the past 2 weeks to recognize the rhythm of messages from that number. You handled it well. The press conference was strong. She didn't have a press conference. Adiz handled the statement. Zara stood beside her and said 4 sentences and kept her face composed and did not shake. She types back, you watched it? The response, yes. She stares at the single word. Then why? The pause before his answer is longer than usual. Long enough that she wonders if she has pushed into territory he won't cross. Then, I wanted to see if they'd managed to make you afraid. And they didn't, he writes. Good. She puts the phone face down on the table. Adiz is watching her with the expression of someone who wants to ask a question and is using significant restraint not to. Don't, Zara says. I haven't said anything. You're thinking loudly. Adiz reaches for more rice. I just want to know who is texting you in a way that makes you look like that. Like what? Like you're deciding whether to run towards something or away from it. Zara picks up her fork. Says nothing. Which for Adiz is an answer. The following week, Su'a requests a meeting with her client and one additional party. Zara arrives at the office and finds Lim Jae-won already there. She has imagined this moment. She has rehearsed her composure for it, reminded herself exactly what he is and what his presence in her life represents, and why she should maintain a professional, practical, measured distance from whatever this is. She has been very thorough about this preparation. None of it survives the first 5 seconds. He stands when she walks in. Not a power move, something more instinctive than that, like a reflex his body performed before his mind could calculate the optics. He is taller than she expected from across a trauma bay. A face all sharp angles and controlled expression. Dark eyes that land on her, and then, for just a fraction of a second, do something she does not have a word for. Not assessment. Not attraction exactly. More like recognition. The way you feel when something you've been searching for stops moving long enough to be seen. Then the fraction of a second ends, and he is perfectly composed again. Ms. Boateng, he says. His voice is exactly what she remembered from the phone. Mr. Lim, she says. He gestures to the chair beside his. She chooses the one across the table. Something flickers in his expression. If she didn't know better, she'd call it amusement. Su'a doesn't waste time. The hospital is in crisis mode. 3 nurses have come forward with corroborating statements. Dr. O's legal team is now arguing that the backup footage was obtained illegally. They will attempt to subpoena the source. They won't find it, Jae-won says. They'll find you, Su'a says. Yes. He says it the way people say the sky is blue. Not bravado, not threat, just the calm of a man who has calculated consequences and made his peace with them. Zara watches him. He is looking at Su'a, which means she can look at him without being caught. She does. The line of his jaw. The careful stillness of his hands on the table. The way he sits like rooms arrange themselves around him rather than the other way. She is a practical woman. She has always been practical. She knows the difference between powerful and safe. She knows which one he is. She looks away. If they come for the source, she says, does that create legal exposure for you? Su'a raises her eyebrows. Jae-won turns his head. Now he is looking at her, and the full weight of it is different from what she expected. Not predatory, not calculating. Attentive, like she is the most interesting problem in the room. Don't worry about me, he says. I'm not worried about you, she says. I'm worried about whether helping me creates consequences that you then have to manage in ways I don't want to be responsible for. A pause. That's a very specific concern. I'm a specific person. His eyes do the thing again. That fraction of a second thing. She catches it this time, and something in her chest pulls, not toward him exactly, just toward something, some current she doesn't yet have navigation for. The exposure is manageable, he says. It was my choice to create it. Why? She asks. Same question she asked on the phone. She asks it again because she suspects the phone answer, because what happened was wrong, was true but incomplete. Something in his jaw shifts. I was there, he says finally. I saw it happen. I saw your face. A beat. I don't leave things unfinished. It is not the full answer. They both know it. But Su'a is already moving to the next agenda item, and whatever was in the air between them is folded away like it never happened. Except Zara's pulse doesn't settle for the rest of the meeting. And when she glances at him once before they leave, just once, just briefly, his eyes are already on her. The case, it turns out, is not a single wall. It is a wall behind which other walls have been standing for years. As Su'a's team begins pulling threads, they find Dr. OJ6's history with Zara's hair is not the beginning of anything. It is the latest installment. A scrub technician who left the hospital 8 months ago and moved back to her hometown without explaining why. 2 nurses who filed internal complaints that somehow never made it past the department level. A resident who requested a transfer in the middle of a prestigious rotation with a reference letter so carefully worded it said nothing while implying everything. The institution had been speaking in the language of protection for years, speaking it quietly, to people who couldn't afford the cost of making it speak louder. Zara doesn't know most of this is happening. She is on administrative leave, which means she is home, which means she is climbing the walls of her Hackney apartment in ways that are not metaphorical. She reorganizes her bookshelf twice by subject and once by color. She makes 3 different batches of jollof rice with diminishing necessity and increasing precision. She calls her mother in Accra every other day and answers the same questions. Yes, she is eating. No, she is not letting them win. Yes, she knows that God did not bring her this far to leave her here. She starts running. Every morning at 6, through the park 2 blocks away. The kind of running that is really just controlled forward falling, because the alternative is standing still, and standing still right now feels like something that could end her if she lets it. He finds her on the 4th morning. She comes around the bend near the fountain, and he is there, Lim J1, in dark running gear that costs more than her gym membership, standing at the park bench with the particular ease of a man the world has learned to make room for. She stops. Are you following me? I was told you run here in the mornings. A pause. I run too. That's not an answer. No, he says. It isn't. And he says it so plainly, so without any apparent need for apology, that she doesn't know whether to be alarmed or something more honest than alarm. Why? She asks. 3rd time she has asked him this question. She asks it the same way every time, not as an accusation, just as the most direct path to information she needs. He looks at her. In the early morning light, without the fluorescent sharpness of the hospital or the formal architecture of a conference room, he looks different. Something less resolved in his expression, like the calculation he normally wears has slipped slightly while he wasn't guarding it. He is, she realizes, a person under the controlled surface. Obvious in the abstract. Somehow surprising in the specific. The hearing is in 2 weeks, he says. There's been a development. He says the next part carefully, watching her face. Dr. O's legal team has hired someone to locate the source of the backup footage. They haven't found me yet, but they've also begun building a parallel case. He pauses. They're suggesting the incident was fabricated, that the footage was staged, that you and several colleagues conspired to damage Dr. O's reputation. The world tilts slightly. She had expected retaliation. She had not expected this specific shape of it, the particular audacity of taking the weapon that was used on her and loading it into her own hands. Her jaw tightens. Okay, she says. He blinks. Just slightly. Okay. That's what I said. She starts stretching. Methodical. Calf, quad, hip flexor, the routine she does every morning regardless of what the morning contains. What do they need to make it stick? He watches her stretch with an expression that is moving through several things and landing somewhere she hasn't seen on him before. Something slower and more confused, like she keeps answering questions he hasn't finished asking. They'd need to discredit at least 2 of the witnesses. Pressure them into changing their statements. He pauses. One of the orderlies received a job offer. Better pay, private clinic, immediate start. He hasn't accepted, but he's afraid. What's his name? Marcus. Marcus Achimpong? She straightens up. I know Marcus. Zara. I'm not a child, she says. Not unkindly. Precisely. This isn't your case to manage on my behalf. You helped me get the footage, and I'm grateful for it. But I'm not going to sit in my apartment while people I've worked alongside for 3 years get pressured into erasing what they saw with their own eyes. That's not how I operate. He is quiet for a moment. She can feel the tension in him, the instinct to protect pressing against something he is still in the process of learning, which is that she doesn't need to be managed. She needs to be backed. I'll come with you, he says. That would make him more afraid, not less. He looks at her. A long, honest look that feels like it is reading something she didn't put on the surface. Then, fine. But you tell me how it goes. Why? Because if they threaten him after your visit, I want to know immediately. And then what? She asks. His expression does something she has not seen on it yet. A kind of restrained intensity, heat held behind glass. Then I handle the people doing the threatening. She should create professional distance from that statement. She should acknowledge the implied violence in it and take a deliberate step back from the man who made it. She should do a lot of things. Instead, what she feels is steady. For the first time in weeks, simply and completely steady. The steadiness of a person who has been fighting alone and just felt the ground solidify beneath them. I'll text you, she says. She runs. Marcus agrees to meet her at a Nigerian restaurant 2 neighborhoods over. He is a large man who looks like he hasn't slept properly since this started, and when Zara slides into the booth across from him, he immediately begins apologizing. I haven't said yes, he says. I want you to know that. I haven't said anything to anyone. I know, she says. I'm not here to pressure you. I'm here to ask if you're okay. He blinks. Like that was the last sentence he was prepared for. They came to my flat, he says. Not a phone call. My flat. With a folder. My landlord's name, my rent history, my daughter's school. He stops. His hands are wrapped around his tea. I have a daughter. 8 years old. I know. She puts her hands flat on the table between them. Marcus, what you saw was real. What you remember is real. And I'm not asking you to be brave for me. That's not fair, and it's not what I'm doing. She meets his eyes directly. But I want you to know that whoever is pressuring you has considerably more to lose from this case than you do. And there are people in my corner who are very good at making that kind of pressure disappear. He looks at her for a long moment. Something in his face shifts. The particular exhaustion of a man who has been carrying something too long, finding the permission, just barely, to put it down. The job offer, he says slowly. It disappeared yesterday. I went to call the number, and it was disconnected. My wife said maybe I imagined the whole thing. You didn't imagine it. He nods slowly. Something in his expression says he already knew that he needed to hear someone say it. She texts J1 from the car park. 3 words. Someone spooked them. His response comes in 38 seconds. Good. That was the point. She stares at the screen. He had already known about the job offer. He had already moved to neutralize it before she got here. He had told her about it. Let her make her own choice to go, treated her decision as hers, while simultaneously removing the threat from the back end. She sits in the car and thinks about the architecture of that for a long time. He is not protecting her instead of her. He is protecting her alongside her, clearing obstacles in the dark and leaving her the visible ground. It is the most sophisticated form of support she has ever received from anyone. It terrifies her. It also does something else that she is not, at this exact moment, ready to name. 2 days before the hearing, Suwa calls with something that reshapes the entire case. 2 more women, she says. Former Harrow General employees. One is in Edinburgh now. One left medicine entirely. A pause. The specific pause of someone selecting their words from a larger available set. They have documented incidents involving Dr. O that the hospital suppressed. Formal records. Dates and times and signatures. How did you find them? Zara asks. Another pause. Longer. I had research assistants. Zara closes her eyes briefly. Of course he found them. He has an empire. An empire, apparently, that he has pointed in her direction. She thinks about what that costs. What it costs to turn an entire operation toward a single person. What it means when someone decides you are worth that. Tell him thank you, she says. You could tell him yourself. I know, she says. Tell him anyway. The night before the hearing, her phone rings at 11:30. She answers immediately. She has been awake anyway. You should sleep, he says. So should you. I don't sleep much. Said the way things are said when they are true and also cost something to say. She settles back against her headboard. The flat is dark except the small lamp above the stove that she always leaves on. The city does its night things outside her window. Where are you? She asks. Nearby. A pause. The hearing is tomorrow. Dr. O's team has been unpredictable, and I wanted to be. He stops. Available, she supplies. Yes. She doesn't push further. He doesn't offer more. They stay on the line in the particular silence of 2 people who have somehow, without deciding to, built something between them. Careful and strange and undeniably real. Are you afraid? He asks finally. Of the hearing. Of any of it. She considers the question the way she considers everything he asks. Seriously, because he asks seriously. I'm afraid of what happens if we win and people act like it's finished. Like one case in one hospital is a solution to what it represents. She pauses. And I'm afraid of what happens if we lose. If I have to figure out what I'm worth in a world that just told me I'm not worth the truth. The silence on his end changes. It becomes weighted. Present. You're worth considerably more than the truth, he says quietly. The truth is just where we're starting. Something in those words lands in her chest with the weight of something she didn't know she had been waiting to hear. She presses the phone a little closer. J1, she says. First time she has said his name like that. Deliberately. With the full weight of what it means to use someone's name as if it belongs to you. Yes, he says. And the way he says it, low, careful, like he felt the intimacy of it too and is deciding what to do with that feeling, tells her something important. Don't come into the courtroom tomorrow, she says. I need to do this part on my own. A beat. I know. But, she breathes. Stay nearby. I already am, he says. She sleeps. The hearing is 4 hours long and Zara is present for every minute of it. She sits beside Suah in the charcoal blazer she bought specifically because she wanted to feel like armor, her hands still on the table, her face holding the careful blankness that strong women learn early because the world punishes visible feeling and she has not come this far to give them anything they can use. Marcus Achimpong testifies. His voice shakes at first, then it steadies. The women Suah found, one appearing by video from Edinburgh, calm and precise. Her prepared statement clearly the work of someone who has been waiting for this specific opportunity for a long time. Give their accounts. The footage plays on the courtroom screen. 49 seconds. Undeniable. Dr. O's lawyer is skilled and expensive and attacks chain of custody, motivation, and Zara's professional history in the specific order a man uses when he is losing and knows it. He uses the word vendetta 3 times. The third time, Suah writes something on her notepad, pushes it toward Zara. He's panicking. Then Suah stands. 30 years of this work, done with precision and a complete personal contempt for inefficiency, taking the floor. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. She lays out the pattern. Not just the 49 seconds, but the Edinburgh employee, the woman who left medicine, the resident who requested a transfer, the internal complaints that never arrived anywhere, the job offer to Marcus that evaporated when someone decided it was easier to remove the threat than to wait and see whether it would work. She builds it the way Zara builds a patient assessment. Systematically, specifically, with the kind of evidence that doesn't leave room for questions about the angle. By the time she finishes, the hearing officer has the particular stillness of a person choosing between their conscience and their comfort, and choosing, slowly and visibly, the former. The interim ruling, Zara reinstated, effective immediately. Dr. OJ6 suspended pending full investigation. The hospital cited for evidence tampering. It is not everything. It won't fix what it represents. She said exactly that on the phone last night, and she will say it again, publicly, clearly, to anyone who will print it. But it is real, and it is documented, and it is hers. In the corridor outside the hearing room, while Suah handles reporters with the efficiency of someone who has done this before, Adiz hugs her hard enough to reorganize her spine. Zara's phone buzzes. Watch the live stream. Suah set up a public feed. She types back. I told you not to come in. I wasn't inside. Where were you? The response is a location pin. The coffee shop directly across the street from the courthouse. She looks up through the glass doors, across 4 lanes of traffic, to the coffee shop's large front window. She can see, if she squints through the afternoon glare, a figure standing at the window. Phone in hand. Looking back, she raises her hand, barely visible through the distance and the glass. He raises his. Adiz follows her gaze, squints. Who is that? Complicated, Zara says. Has he been there the whole time? She thinks about staying nearby. About 11:30 and a dark flat, and you're worth considerably more than the truth. Yes, she says. He has. She gives interviews. She speaks carefully about what the case represents and what still needs to change, because winning one case in one hospital is a beginning and not an end, and she is not going to let anyone package it as either. She lets Suah steer the narrative with the precision of a master. She hugs Marcus Achimpong and means every second of it. She does all of that. And then she crosses the street. The coffee shop is warm and slightly too loud with the afternoon crowd. He is at a corner table, an untouched cup in front of him, and he stands again when he sees her. The same reflex, the same instinctive rise. And this time, instead of stiffening, something in her softens. She sits down across from him. Neither of them speaks for a moment. The noise of the shop wraps around them like cover. You did it, he says. We did it, she says. Don't be modest. It's less becoming than everything else about you. Something crosses his face, warm and surprised and quickly managed, like a man who is not accustomed to being teased and finds that it has done something to him he wasn't prepared for. It changes him, just for a second. Makes him look like someone who knows how to be happy and has simply been a long time out of practice. Thank you, she says. Meaning it completely. Meaning all of it. The footage and the women he found and the job offer that disappeared, and 11:30 and staying nearby, and 4 hours at a window across the street. He shakes his head slightly. You would have found another way. Maybe. But this way was better. She looks at him. Really looks. The way she has been carefully not letting herself look, because every time she does, The current between them gets stronger, and she is a practical woman who has always known the difference between powerful and safe. What happens now, she says. For you. You pulled resources. You moved people around. You spent time and attention and whatever currency you actually operate in on my case. She keeps her voice even. That lands somewhere. There's always a cost. His hands are on the table between them. Still, she notices them. Not a surgeon's hands. Those save and his have done other things. Things she is not ready to ask about yet because she is not ready for those answers. But careful hands. Controlled. There's always a cost, he says. I chose it. Why? She asks. Fourth time. She always comes back to this question with him because every answer he has given has been true and incomplete, and she suspects the complete answer is the one that changes everything. This time, he doesn't give her the incomplete version. He looks at her steadily, across the small table in the noisy coffee shop, with the afternoon light cutting in at an angle that catches the dark of his eyes, and he says, because I was in that hospital, and I saw what he did to you. And I saw how you held yourself afterward, how you refused, how you stayed present, how you didn't let it break you. He stops. His jaw shifts. And something happened in me that I don't have the language for. I have been practical my whole life. I have run on logic and leverage and the particular calculus of necessity. And then you were there. And for a moment, I was none of those things. And I haven't been entirely those things since. The room is loud around them. Under the table, her hands have gone very still. You should know, she says carefully, that I'm aware of what you are. What you do, I know you are. And I haven't decided what I think about it. I know that too. A beat. I'm not asking you to decide tonight. She looks at him for a long time. The current is strong. It has been building since a parking garage and a phone call and a park bench at 6 in the morning and 11:30 at night with the city humming. It would be easy to let it take her somewhere she hasn't mapped. She is a practical woman. She is also, right now, sitting across from a man who stood at a window across the street for 4 hours because she asked him to stay nearby. Dinner, she says. Not tonight. Not as a thank you. She holds his gaze. As something I want. He is quiet for a moment. The expression on his face does something new. Something she doesn't have a name for yet, but recognizes. The way you recognize a feeling you've never felt before because your body has been carrying the space for it all along. Waiting. Yes, he says. Simply. Completely. If your heart is in this story the way I think it is, then you know what to do. Subscribe to Blossom and Baobabs. Hit that notification bell. Drop a comment and tell me, what moment in this part hit you the hardest? Was it the park? The phone call? The window across the street? Because I promise you, what these two build next is worth every single moment of the wait. Now let's continue. Dinner is a week later at a restaurant she chooses. Not expensive. Not a statement. Just good food in a warm room in Peckham where nobody is performing for anyone, and the noise is the kind that comes from people who are actually enjoying themselves rather than people who are being seen to enjoy themselves. She chose it deliberately. She wanted to see what he was like in a room where he couldn't be impressive. He arrives exactly on time in dark clothes that say civilian, but cannot quite conceal what he is underneath. He pulls out her chair. She lets him, which surprises her slightly, because she is not generally a woman who requires chairs to be pulled out, and she is not sure what it says about this specific man that she let him do it without comment. The wine is good. The conversation moves like something that was always going to move this way, inevitable and unhurried, each exchange building the next. He tells her things he doesn't tell people. Not the surface things, not the biography that can be assembled from public information. The real shape of himself under the controlled architecture. He came to this country at 20 with nothing that mattered. He built his empire not from ambition exactly, but from a very specific and very sustained fury at watching people who looked like him be treated as if they occupied the world on someone else's conditional terms. He tells her there are parts of what he does that he can justify and parts he cannot, and that he stopped, a long time ago, pretending he didn't know the difference. She listens. She is good at listening. It is deep in the marrow of nursing, the ability to hear what people mean underneath what they say. What she hears underneath limb J1 is a man who has been alone in his power for a very long time. Not lonely, exactly. Alone in the way of people whose specific kind of strength doesn't leave much room for company. She tells him about her mother's clinic in Accra, about watching nurses do invisible, essential, life-sustaining work and be treated as furniture by the doctors who couldn't function without them. About choosing this career as a form of argument, a daily, specific insistence that, I see you, you matter, I will stay. About the particular exhaustion of being strong in spaces that respond to your strength with higher expectations and zero grace. About the way her natural hair became a political statement she didn't make, assigned to her by the people who saw it as a problem before they ever asked her name. He listens the way she listens to him. Like every word is a door, and he intends to miss none of them. They close the restaurant. On the pavement after, the city cool and lit around them. He walks close without touching. She is aware of the proximity, the warmth of him, the careful, deliberate restraint he is exercising. She stops at the corner and turns, and he is right there, closer than she expected, and neither of them moves. I should tell you, she says, her voice quiet in the street noise, that I don't make decisions like this quickly. Like what? Like whatever this is. She gestures at the space between them. The inadequacy of the gesture makes her almost smile. I'm careful. I've always been careful. I know, he says. And you're the opposite of everything I've been careful about. I know that too. His voice has dropped. The restraint is doing something visible in his jaw, in the controlled stillness of his hands at his sides. I'm not asking you to stop being careful, he says. Then what are you asking? He looks at her, the fraction of a second thing, and then longer than a fraction of a second, and then he says, let me be worth the risk. It is exactly the right thing to say, which tells her something about him that she files away carefully, that he has somehow, without her teaching it explicitly, learned the architecture of her, that he paid attention to the right things. She reaches up and places her palm against his jaw. Just that. Warm skin. The slight roughness of the hour. She feels the way his breath changes. One deep, barely managed inhale, the most honest thing she has seen from him yet. Earn it, she says. He turns his face slightly into her hand, presses his lips to her palm. Brief, certain, devastating. She lets him drive her home. He earns it. Not by grand gestures alone, though there are those too. The security detail she doesn't notice for 3 weeks until Adiz points out that the same black car is always a block from wherever she is. The package that arrives at her flat containing a first edition of a medical ethics textbook she mentioned once in passing. The way he appears on the street outside Harrow General on her first morning back, not to escort her in, just to be visible on the pavement in case the building tries to swallow her again. He earns it in smaller ways. By asking questions and waiting for the full answer. By not flinching when she pushes back. And she pushes back regularly, because she is constitutionally incapable of agreeing with things she doesn't agree with, and she needed to know early whether that was something he could hold. By learning, slowly and visibly, that protecting her and controlling her are not the same thing, and choosing the former consistently. He earns it one evening when she has been back at work for 2 weeks, and she is tired in the particular bone-deep way of someone who has been proving themselves to the same room on a daily basis. And she says so on the phone at 9 o'clock at night, not because she needs him to fix it, just because he asked how she was, and she told him the truth. And he says nothing for a moment. Then he says, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And she says, I don't need rescuing. And he says, I know. I'll bring food. And she says, bring egusi soup if you can find it. And he says, done. And 23 minutes later he is at her door with egusi soup from a West African restaurant she didn't know he knew about, and they eat it on her couch. And he doesn't try to make anything better, he just stays until she is no longer tired in that way, and then he goes home. She thinks about that evening for a long time afterward, about what it means to be accompanied rather than managed. There is a night 3 weeks after her return to the hospital when she is at his apartment for the first time. Ace of dark surfaces and clean lines, impeccably ordered, and she notices, the way she notices everything about him, cataloging, understanding, a very careful absence of anything personal. No photographs, no objects that speak of a history somewhere else. A man who built an entire empire and somehow never quite let himself arrive in a life. She is standing at his window in her coat, looking at the city, when he comes to stand beside her, and she turns, and he is right there, and the distance between them is nothing, and they have been practicing the language of this for long enough that when it finally happens it doesn't feel like breaking anything. It feels like arriving. He is gentle in a way that surprises her, and focused in a way that doesn't. his hands in her hair, careful, asking, the absolute opposite of the last hands that touched it without permission, and she feels the difference in every part of her body. The distinction between being handled and being held. The distinction between someone taking and someone giving their complete attention to what you need. The city blurs beyond the window. Afterward, in the quiet, she lies against his chest and feels his heartbeat still running faster than his face would suggest. Something settles in her that has been unsettled since a nurse's station and a yank and the word misunderstood. Something that was loose and frightened finds a place to anchor. I'm still not done being afraid of this, she says to the ceiling. I know, he says into her hair. Neither am I. She finds this more comforting than if he had promised her certainty. A man who claims certainty about the kind of thing they are building is either lying or not paying attention. She is reassured by a man who is paying attention. It is a PL. The case concludes 6 weeks after her return to Harrow General. Dr. OJ6's medical license is suspended for 2 years pending review. The hospital's board settles with Zara for a number that is meaningful and comes with a public apology negotiated word by Sua, with the precision of someone who has never in her professional life accepted a first draft. 3 of the 6 board members who attempted to suppress the footage quietly resigned in the following weeks. The scrub technician in her hometown is contacted and heard and believed and offered a proper settlement and does not have to move back alone. None of it is everything. Zara says this clearly, specifically, in the interview that runs nationally. Sitting straight, hands still, voice unhurried. She says it, and then she says the rest. What still needs to change, who is still invisible in these halls, what her return to Harrow General means, and what it doesn't mean, what the work looks like from here. She says it without asking permission. Lim Jae-won watches the interview from a hotel room in Seoul, where he is managing something that required his physical presence, and which he is now managing considerably faster than he has ever managed anything before, because he wants to be back in 4 days instead of 8. He texts her, "You're extraordinary." She texts back, "You're biased." He responds, "Completely. Come to Seoul with me when this is done." She stares at that for a moment. Then, "Ask me again when you're home." He is home in 3 days. He asks her at the airport, in the arrivals hall before he has even cleared the barrier, which is not how he planned it. He had something more measured in mind, something that matched the way she moves through the world, deliberate and true. But then he sees her standing just past the barrier in a yellow dress with her hair down for once, loose and full and exactly as it should be, and all the measured planning simply evaporates. "Come to Seoul with me," he says. Right there, in the noise and movement of an international terminal. She laughs, the real laugh, the one that breaks out of her entirely without permission, the one he has been cataloging since the pediatric bay at 2 in the morning when she laughed at a child's crayon drawing. "You already asked me. You said ask again when I'm home. You've been home for approximately 40 seconds. Yes." He steps closer. Crowds moving past them, ordinary and oblivious. Zara, just her name. The way he says it, low, certain, like something he came back specifically for. She looks at him. All the current, all the months of it, present in the space between them. "Seoul," she says. "Yes." She holds up one finger. "But we negotiate everything else." His expression does the thing she has never seen enough of, the warmth under all the architecture. The thing that makes him look like who he actually is when he stops performing what he was made to be. "Everything," he says. He takes her hand. She lets him. And in the middle of an airport in front of no one in particular and everyone in general, he lifts her hand to his mouth and presses his lips to her knuckles, certain, unhurried, the way he does things that matter, and the city and the world arranged themselves around them the way they were always going to. 6 months later, in a room overlooking the Han River with their families present, and Sua quietly crying in the front row and Adiz loudly critiquing the floral arrangements from somewhere in the middle, Zara signs her name beside his on a document that is simple and permanent and true. He finds her at the window afterward. He always finds her at windows. This is something she has learned about him, that when he is looking for her, he checks the window first, because he knows that she is the kind of person who needs to see the city to feel real in it. He comes to stand behind her, his arms around her, his chin at her temple, and for a long moment they are simply still. "You know," she says, "this started because someone pulled my hair." "No," he says. "It started because you didn't let them win." She turns in his arms and looks at him with the specific, earned clarity of a woman who knows exactly where she is standing and chose to be here. We, she says. He smiles, wide and real and completely his. We. Outside the window, Seoul does what cities do. Noise and motion and the indifferent ordinary beauty of a place that contains 10 million stories and knows none of them. Inside, between two people who found each other in the wreckage of someone else's cruelty, something breathes that is permanent and impossible and entirely theirs. She had come to that hospital on an ordinary shift. She had stood at a nurse's station charting because that is what she did. The one who kept the chaos from collapsing. The one everyone relied on without ever thinking to ask if she was all right. The one who swallowed what she had been expected to swallow until the night someone decided to grab her hair in front of everyone, and she looked up, and her eyes said something that one man, in a corner she didn't know about, was paying close enough attention to see. He had seen her face. He had stayed. And what grew from that? From the staying, from the footage and the lawyer and the park bench at 6 in the morning and the phone call at 11:30 and the window across the street, was not a rescue. She was never waiting to be rescued. What grew was something rarer and more specific. The discovery that being backed is not the same as being managed, that someone can be in your corner without occupying the corner themselves, that the most powerful kind of support is the kind that leaves you visible. She had fought her own battle. He had cleared the ground. They had built the rest together. No regrets, he asks, later, in the quiet of the room with the city outside and the reception noise fading behind the closed door. One, she says. He waits. I wish I'd looked through the glass properly that night, she says. Instead of just filing you under leave alone. He is quiet for a moment. Then, you looked exactly the right amount. Anything more, and you'd have seen me coming. She laughs. He kisses her temple. Outside, Seoul is indifferent and beautiful. Inside, the two of them are neither of those things. They are specific and warm and entirely, permanently real. And that is better than anything the city has to offer. If this story found you at the right moment, if it gave you something you needed, then do something for me right now. Subscribe to Blossom and Baobabs. Hit that notification bell. Drop a comment below and tell me the moment that got you. Was it the park bench? The phone call at 11:30? The hand raised across 4 lanes of traffic? The arrivals hall? Tell me, because these stories are as much yours as they are mine. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that being seen by the right person, really seen, is worth every complicated, frightening, wonderful thing that comes with it. I love every single one of you. Stay rooted. Keep blooming.